Blood Moon Manor. The night was heavy with an eerie stillness as Dr. Alina Van Helsing arrived at the foreboding gates of Blood Moon Manor. The mansion loomed in front of her, an ancient and decrepit relic of a bygone era. Its stone walls were weathered and cracked, and its windows were shattered remnants of the once grand estate. Dr. Van Helsing was a woman of formidable intellect and unyielding determination. With a dark past that haunted her every step, she had dedicated her life to hunting the creatures of the night, vampires, who had claimed the lives of her family. Blood Moon Manor was her latest assignment, and she had heard whispers that it was a cursed place, the epicenter of a series of mysterious deaths. As she stepped through the creaking gates and into the moonlit courtyard, a shiver ran down her spine. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie crimson glow over the mansion, lending it an even more sinister appearance. She knew that tonight was no ordinary night. It was a blood moon, a night of power for vampires, when their strength was at its zenith. With every footstep, the atmosphere grew thicker, laden with dread and impending doom. Dr. Van Helsing's lantern cast flickering shadows that danced upon the walls, like restless souls seeking escape. She approached the imposing oak doors of the mansion, which groaned in protest as she pushed them open. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of decay and old secrets. Cobwebs draped the grand staircase, and the once opulent furnishings lay in ruins. Dr. Van Helsing knew she was not alone. The presence of the supernatural was palpable. She had entered the lair of Count Vladislaus, an enigmatic and powerful vampire lord. Her investigation led her through the winding corridors of the mansion, where she uncovered traces of a sinister history. Portraits of long-forgotten nobles with hollow eyes lined the walls, and whispers echoed in the air like the mournful cries of the damned. Hidden passages concealed ancient texts that hinted at the mansion's malevolent past and the curse that bound it. As she delved deeper into the heart of Blood Moon Manor, Dr. Van Helsing's resolve grew stronger. She had faced countless vampires in her lifetime, but none as formidable as Count Vladislaus. The vampire lord had a taste for vengeance, and he had spared no expense in protecting his lair from intruders. Then, in the darkest recesses of the mansion, she found the crypt. It was a chamber of unspeakable horrors, where the remains of countless victims lay in various states of decay. Dr. Van Helsing's heart sank as she realized the true extent of the vampire lord's malevolence. She could feel Count Vladislaus closing in on her, his presence like a shadowy specter in the night. The final confrontation was inevitable. Dr. Van Helsing had one advantage, one weapon that could turn the tide in her favor, the knowledge that vengeance and darkness always came at a price. The night had deepened, and the crimson moon hung lower in the sky. Dr. Van Helsing stood her ground in the crypt, her lantern casting eerie, shifting shadows on the walls. She could hear the whispers of the vampire lord, taunting her, promising her eternal darkness. And then he emerged from the shadows, a figure of elegance and menace. Count Vladislaus, his eyes gleaming with malevolent hunger, advanced with a grace that belied his monstrous nature. Dr. Van Helsing met his gaze with unyielding resolve, her hand gripping a stake carved from a branch of the oldest oak tree. Their clash was swift and brutal, a dance of life and death in the depths of the cursed mansion. Count Vladislaus moved with supernatural speed, his fangs bared and his claws extended. Dr. Van Helsing fought with a determination born of years of pain and loss. In the end, it was the allure of darkness and the weight of vengeance that proved to be Count Vladislaus's downfall. Dr. Van Helsing struck the vampire lord through the heart with the oak stake, and he crumbled into dust, his malevolent presence dissipating into the night. As the crimson moon waned and the first rays of dawn broke through the shattered windows of Blood Moon Manor, Dr. Van Helsing knew that her mission was complete. The curse that had plagued the mansion had been lifted, and its dark secrets would remain buried forever. She stepped out into the courtyard, the weight of the night's events heavy upon her shoulders. The once decrepit mansion now stood silent and still, its malevolence vanquished. Dr. Alina Van Helsing had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but she knew that her battle against the creatures of the night would continue. The eternal struggle between good and evil would rage on, and she would be there to stand against it, no matter the cost. Shadows of the Vampire. In the heart of the Carpathian Mountains, where the dense forests cast long, haunting shadows, there lay a small, isolated village. This village, hidden away from the world, held a dark secret that few dared to whisper about. It was a place where the veil between reality and nightmare was thin, and where the innocence of its people was constantly threatened by an ancient evil. Among the villagers was a young woman named Alina. With raven black hair and a spirit filled with curiosity, she had always been drawn to the mysteries that shrouded her home. Yet, nothing could have prepared her for the horrors that awaited her in the depths of the forest. As the village slept under the silvery glow of the moon, Alina's restless soul urged her to explore the unknown. She crept through the dark woods, her steps cautious but filled with determination. Her curiosity had led her to stories of a malevolent force that haunted their village, a vampire named Lord Damien. Alina had heard whispers in the dead of night, tales told in hushed tones about his charismatic presence that hid a sinister hunger. She had listened to the anguished cries of mothers mourning their stolen children and the mournful wails of lovers who had vanished into the night, never to return. It was said that Lord Damien's lair lay deep within the heart of the forest, hidden beneath the tangled branches and the chilling silence of the night. And it was there, guided by an eerie intuition, that Alina found herself standing before the entrance to the vampire's lair. The air grew colder with each step she took into the depths of the cave. Shadows danced upon the walls, their movements both hypnotic and menacing. Alina's heart pounded in her chest as she ventured further, guided only by a faint, otherworldly whisper that urged her onward. As she reached the heart of the cave, her lantern's dim light revealed a horrifying sight. The cave's walls were lined with skeletal remains, their hollow eyes seeming to watch her every move. It was a chilling testament to the countless lives that had been claimed by Lord Damien's insatiable thirst for blood. Alina's breath caught in her throat as she realized the magnitude of the danger she had placed herself in. Panic threatened to consume her, but she knew that turning back was no longer an option. Her loved ones, her village, depended on her courage. With a trembling hand, Alina withdrew a small vial of liquid from her satchel. It was a concoction passed down through generations, a mixture of herbs and potions rumored to hold the power to confound and weaken the undead. It was her only hope, her desperate plan to outsmart Lord Damien. As she made her way deeper into the cave, the eerie whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a chilling symphony of the damned. Shadows danced and contorted, taking on sinister forms that reached out to grasp her. But Alina pressed on, her heart filled with determination and dread in equal measure. And then she found him. Lord Damien, the vampire who had cast a dark shadow over her village, stood before her in all his malevolent glory. His piercing gaze locked onto her, and his lips curled into a sinister smile that revealed gleaming fangs. "You are brave to venture into my domain, little mortal," he hissed, his voice a cruel melody. "But bravery alone will not save you." With a grace that defied his monstrous nature, Lord Damien lunged at Alina, his fangs bared and eyes ablaze with hunger. But she was ready. With a swift, practiced motion, she flung the vial of her ancestors' potion toward the vampire, and it shattered upon impact. A cloud of noxious vapor enveloped Lord Damien, and his triumphant expression twisted into one of agony. He howled in torment as the potion's magic seared through his undead flesh. Alina's heart pounded as she watched him weaken, his powers waning. Summoning all her strength and resolve, Alina drew a wooden stake from her satchel and plunged it into Lord Damien's heart. The vampire let out a blood-curdling scream as he disintegrated into ash, his malevolence vanquished at last. With Lord Damien defeated, Alina emerged from the cave, her heart heavy with the knowledge of the darkness she had faced and conquered. The villagers, no longer living in fear, celebrated her bravery and determination. But Alina knew that the battle between innocence and corruption was an eternal one, and that the shadows of the vampire would forever haunt their forested home. Yet, as she looked up at the moonlit sky, she also knew that their strength, their determination, would always prevail against the forces of darkness that lurked in the unknown. Crimson Veil. The night was alive with whispers of forbidden desires and hidden temptations. A lavish ballroom, shrouded in darkness, lay nestled within the ancient walls of a European castle. It was a place where reality and illusion merged, where the boundaries between pleasure and peril blurred, and where Isabella, a talented young dancer, was about to step into a world she could never have imagined. Isabella had received an invitation, an ornate envelope adorned with an elegant blood-red seal. It bore the seal of Count Draven, a charismatic vampire noble who had long held a captivating allure over those who had heard of him. The invitation was to a masquerade ball that promised to be a night of opulence and enchantment. It was an invitation that she could not resist. As Isabella arrived at the castle, she was greeted by the flickering light of torches that cast eerie shadows on the stone walls. The air was heavy with anticipation as she entered the ballroom, its opulent decor awash in shades of crimson. Chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, their crystal prisms glinting like diamonds, while guests in elaborate masks and sumptuous attire twirled across the floor. The dance began, and Isabella found herself gliding effortlessly, her body moving in time with the hypnotic rhythm of the music. As she danced, she couldn't help but feel a sense of seductive enchantment in the room, an allure that seemed to emanate from every corner. It was then that Isabella's gaze locked with a pair of piercing, crimson eyes, the eyes of Count Draven himself. He was a vision of dark elegance, his pale skin contrasting sharply with his black attire. He moved through the ballroom with a predatory grace, drawing the attention of all who had gathered. With a smile that was both charming and unnerving, Count Draven approached Isabella and extended a hand, inviting her to join him in a dance. She hesitated for only a moment before placing her hand in his, and they glided onto the dance floor together. The world around Isabella seemed to fade away as she danced with the enigmatic vampire. His touch was cold and electric, sending shivers down her spine. She felt herself drawn deeper into his seductive embrace, unable to resist the allure of his presence. As they danced, Count Draven leaned closer, his lips brushing against her ear. "Do you know what we truly are, my dear?" he whispered, his voice dripping with temptation. Isabella's heart raced as she realized the truth, that she was surrounded by vampires, creatures of the night who thrived on the blood of the living. The other guests wore masks of beauty and elegance, but beneath the facade, they were predators in disguise. The ballroom pulsed with a dark, hypnotic energy, and Isabella's fear mingled with a thrilling sense of danger. She had entered a world of temptation and forbidden desires, where the line between pleasure and peril was razor thin. As the night wore on, Count Draven led Isabella to a secluded alcove, hidden behind a heavy, crimson velvet curtain. There, away from the prying eyes of the other guests, he revealed more of his true nature. His fangs extended, glistening in the dim light, and he leaned closer to her neck, his breath hot against her skin. Isabella knew that she was at the mercy of the vampire's desires, and yet a part of her was inexplicably drawn to him. It was a dangerous, intoxicating dance of seduction, one that promised both ecstasy and peril. But just as Count Draven's fangs grazed her skin, a sudden commotion erupted in the ballroom. The other guests had begun to reveal their own vampiric natures, their masks falling away to reveal rows of sharp teeth and hungry eyes. Panic swept through the room as the vampires descended upon the unsuspecting guests, and chaos ensued. Isabella watched in horror as the ballroom transformed into a nightmarish tableau of violence and predation. With a surge of adrenaline, Isabella pushed away from Count Draven, her heart pounding with fear and determination. She knew that she had to escape the castle and the darkness that had ensnared her. As she fled through the winding corridors of the castle, she could hear the vampires' bloodthirsty cries behind her. They pursued her with a relentless hunger, their predatory instincts driving them to seek the taste of her blood. Finally, Isabella burst through the castle doors and into the moonlit courtyard. She ran through the gardens, her breath ragged, her heart racing. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the ancient stones. But just as she thought she had evaded her pursuers, Count Draven appeared before her, his eyes aflame with hunger. He cornered her against a stone wall, his fangs inches from her throat. In that desperate moment, Isabella reached into her satchel and withdrew a vial of holy water. With trembling hands, she splashed it onto Count Draven's face, and he howled in pain as the holy power burned his undead flesh. With a final, desperate push, Isabella shoved him away and sprinted into the night. She could hear Count Draven's enraged cries echoing through the castle as she disappeared into the darkness. As she looked back at the castle, she knew that she had narrowly escaped the clutches of the seductive vampires. She had glimpsed the price of indulgence, the danger of temptation, and the allure of the unknown. And as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, Isabella knew that she had survived a night of terror and seduction, but the memory of the crimson veil would haunt her dreams forever. Nightfall in New Orleans. The streets of New Orleans came alive with a riot of colors and music as Mardi Gras festivities reached their peak. It was a night of revelry, a night when the city's soul seemed to dance to the rhythm of jazz and the beat of 1,000 hearts. But amid the celebration, a sinister presence lurked, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Detective Marie Laveau, a seasoned investigator with eyes that held the wisdom of years spent in pursuit of the darkest secrets, had learned to distrust the festive atmosphere of Mardi Gras. Beneath the vibrant carnival masks and the intoxicating scent of Cajun cuisine, a shadowy figure moved silently, preying on the revelers. It began with the discovery of a lifeless body amidst the joyous parade. A young woman, her eyes wide with terror, lay cold and pale on the cobblestone street, a mask of crimson and gold next to her. It was a gruesome sight amidst the vibrant celebration, a reminder that darkness could intrude even upon the brightest of festivities. Detective Laveau knew that she had to act swiftly. She followed the trail of blood through the labyrinthine streets, her footsteps echoing in the night. The city seemed to hold its breath as if anticipating the next victim, and the music of the parade grew distant as she delved deeper into the heart of the night. It was then that she saw him, a man with an air of predatory elegance, dressed in a tuxedo that seemed out of place amidst the carnival costumes. His name was Marcel, and he was a vampire with a taste for revelry. He moved through the crowded streets with an effortless grace, blending seamlessly with the throngs of festival-goers. Detective Lavau's pursuit of Marcel led her through a maze of elaborate Mardi Gras costumes and whispered legends of the Bay. She could feel his presence, a chilling shadow in the midst of celebration. But the vampire remained elusive, slipping through her grasp like a phantom. As the night wore on, Detective Laveau sought the guidance of a voodoo priestess, a wise woman who dwelled in the heart of the city. The priestess spoke of ancient legends and the delicate balance between light and darkness during Mardi Gras. She provided Detective Laveau with a vial of enchanted water, blessed with the power to reveal the vampire's true nature. Armed with the voodoo priestess's gift, Detective Leval continued her pursuit. She followed the trail of revelers, each step taking her closer to Marcel and the impending danger. The streets of New Orleans pulsed with energy, but the detective could sense the darkness lurking beneath the joyful facade. Finally, she cornered Marcel in a haunted cemetery on the outskirts of the city. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the moss-draped tombstones. Detective Leval's heart raced as she confronted the vampire, her grip firm on the vial of enchanted water. Marcel, his eyes gleaming with hunger, lunged at her with supernatural speed. But Detective Leval was ready. She splashed the enchanted water onto Marcel's face, and his elegant mask of humanity melted away, revealing the monster beneath. With a guttural snarl, Marcel recoiled, his fangs bared in a silent scream of agony. The enchanted water seared through his undead flesh, leaving him vulnerable and weakened. It was a moment of reckoning, a clash between the forces of light and darkness on the most sacred night in New Orleans. Detective Leval knew that she had to act swiftly. She drew a wooden stake from her coat, its sharpened tip glinting in the moonlight. With a determined thrust, she plunged it into Marcel's heart, and he crumbled into dust. His reign of terror ended. As the first rays of dawn broke over the haunted cemetery, Detective Marie Leval stood victorious, a symbol of the resilience of the human spirit against the lurking horrors of the night. The revelry of Mardi Gras continued in the distance, but the city was safe once more. New Orleans, a city of vibrant celebration and hidden horrors, had faced its darkest night and emerged into the light of a new day. Detective Leval knew that the clash between light and darkness was eternal. But on this sacred night, light had triumphed over the shadows, and the city would dance once more to the rhythm of life. Midnight Express. Beneath the bustling metropolis, hidden from the world above, lay a labyrinthine nightmare, an abandoned subway station overrun by vampires. Its dark, forgotten tunnels echoed with the whispered secrets of the undead. And in the depths of the subterranean world, Max and a group of survivors fought for their lives. Max, a resourceful survivor with the weariness of countless sleepless nights etched into his features, had discovered the subway station as a last refuge. Its grimy walls were adorned with eerie graffiti, and flickering lights cast long, menacing shadows. It was a place where the fear of confinement clawed at their minds. But it was also their only chance of survival. The vampires had descended upon the city like a plague, their numbers multiplying with each passing night. Victor, their cunning leader, had found a haven beneath the city's streets, and he ruled the underground world with an iron grip. Max and his fellow survivors knew that they could not stay hidden forever. Food and supplies were running low, and their desperate attempts to outsmart the vampires had grown increasingly dangerous. They had to escape the underground labyrinth, but the tunnels were a treacherous maze of darkness and peril. One fateful night, as the survivors huddled together in the subway station, Max made a decision. With grim determination, he rallied the group and outlined a plan to escape through the tunnels, avoiding the vampires' hunting grounds and reaching the surface. Their journey through the underground labyrinth was a harrowing one. The flickering lights cast eerie, shifting shadows that seemed to come to life. Every creak and echo of the tunnels was a reminder of the lurking danger, and the constant threat of vampire attacks kept their nerves on edge. As they pressed on, Max could feel the hopelessness of their situation closing in. The tunnels seemed to stretch on endlessly, their confinement suffocating. Yet, he knew that giving in to despair was not an option. The will to survive burned fiercely within him, and he urged his fellow survivors to push forward. But the vampires were relentless in their pursuit. Victor, their cunning leader, seemed to anticipate their every move. He taunted them from the shadows, his voice a chilling whisper that echoed through the tunnels. He knew that the survivors were desperate, that their chances of escape were growing slim. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, Max and his group encountered traps set by the vampires, pitfalls, false exits, and dead-end tunnels that threatened to trap them forever. It was a game of survival, a deadly chess match in the darkest of arenas. With each passing hour, their numbers dwindled as the vampires closed in. The survivors fought back with whatever weapons they could find, makeshift stakes and torches, but the odds were stacked against them. And then, just when it seemed that all hope was lost, they stumbled upon an ancient subway car, long abandoned and covered in dust. It offered a glimmer of hope, a chance to outrun the vampires and reach the surface. As the survivors clambered into the subway car, Max took one last look back at the darkness of the tunnels. He knew that they were leaving behind a world of nightmares, but they were also leaving behind their fear and despair. The subway car rattled to life, its wheels screeching against the tracks as it sped through the underground tunnels. The vampires, their eyes burning with hunger and rage, pursued with unearthly speed, but the survivors had a chance, a narrow window of escape. The journey through the tunnels was a nightmarish blur of flickering lights and fleeting glimpses of the vampires behind them. The subway car hurtled toward the surface, its destination a beacon of hope in the darkness. As they burst into the night above, the survivors gasped for breath, their eyes blinded by the sudden flood of moonlight. They had made it, but the battle was far from over. The vampires, thwarted in their pursuit, would not rest until they had exacted their revenge. Max and his fellow survivors knew that they had survived a nightmarish ordeal, that the fear of confinement had been replaced by the exhilaration of freedom. But they also knew that the vampires still lurked in the shadows, waiting for their next opportunity. As they made their way through the city, Max's gaze turned upward, to the endless expanse of the night sky. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always a glimmer of hope, a chance for survival, and the resilience of the human spirit to defy the forces of darkness. The Vampires of Vienna. In the heart of 19th century Vienna, a city steeped in history and culture, where the grandeur of palaces and the elegance of ballrooms hid secrets darker than the deepest shadows, Professor Johann von Helsing arrived with a purpose. He was a scholar of the occult, a seeker of the unknown, and his journey had brought him to this city where history and horror intertwine. Vienna's cobblestone streets whispered tales of long-forgotten societies. Vampires, creatures of the night who had thrived in the shadows of history. They had hidden themselves well, beneath the facade of aristocratic grandeur and the strains of Viennese classical music. As Professor von Helsing delved deeper into the city's mysteries, he discovered a resurgence of vampire activity, a resurgence that threatened the delicate balance between the living and the undead. The professor knew that he had to uncover the truth, to unravel the secrets that had been carefully hidden away for centuries. It was in the dimly lit corridors of Vienna's underground catacombs that he first encountered Lady Isolde, a vampire with a tragic past. Her eyes, once filled with the light of life, now bore the weight of centuries of darkness. She had been part of the hidden vampire society that lurked in the city's shadows, but she sought redemption, a way to escape the eternal curse that bound her. Their paths had crossed in the most unlikely of places, a forgotten chamber deep within the catacombs, where Lady Isolde had been imprisoned by her own kind. Professor von Helsing, armed with his knowledge of the occult and the strength of his convictions, had come to confront the vampire threat, but he had not expected to encounter such a complex figure. Lady Isolde's beauty was haunting, her presence a blend of elegance and despair. She spoke of a past filled with longing and regret, a past that had driven her to seek forgiveness for the unspeakable deeds of her kind. As Professor von Helsing delved deeper into the world of Vienna's vampires, he uncovered a complex web of politics and power struggles, where ancient rivalries and forbidden desires simmered beneath the surface. The vampire society was governed by a council of elders, each with their own hidden agendas, and it was clear that the balance between the old and new worlds was fragile. Amidst the grandeur of Vienna's opulent ballrooms and the haunting strains of a vampire opera that echoed through the night, Professor von Helsing and Lady Isolde formed an uneasy alliance. She shared with him the secrets of her kind, the vulnerabilities and strengths of the vampires, and he in turn offered her a glimmer of hope for redemption. Their relationship was a complex dance of trust and betrayal, a dance that mirrored the elegance and horror of Vienna itself. Lady Isolde longed for forgiveness, for a chance to break free from the chains of her vampiric nature, while Professor von Helsing remained resolute in his mission to uncover the truth and protect the living. As they delved deeper into the heart of the vampire society, they discovered a hidden plot, a plan to unleash a new wave of darkness upon the city. The Council of Elders, driven by their thirst for power, sought to expand their influence and control over Vienna, threatening the very fabric of the city's existence. Professor von Helsing and Lady Isolde knew that they had to act swiftly. They ventured into the depths of the catacombs, where the Council of Elders held their meetings, their plans veiled in secrecy and shadow. It was a treacherous journey, filled with traps and betrayals, but they pressed on, driven by their shared goal. In the climactic showdown, amidst the haunting echoes of the vampire opera, Professor von Helsing and Lady Isolde confronted the Council of Elders. The battle that ensued was a testament to their resilience and determination, a clash of old and new worlds, of forgiveness and vengeance. In the end, they emerged victorious, but not without sacrifices. The Council of Elders was vanquished, and Vienna was freed from the looming darkness that had threatened to consume it. Lady Isolde, her thirst for redemption finally realized, made the ultimate sacrifice to protect the city she had once terrorized. As the first rays of dawn broke over Vienna, Professor Johann von Helsing stood amidst the ruins of the vampire society, a symbol of the enduring power of love and forgiveness in the face of darkness. The city, with its grandeur and elegance, had been saved, and the echoes of its haunted past slowly faded into history. In the heart of 19th century Vienna, where elegance and horror had danced a delicate waltz, the vampires of old had been vanquished, and a new chapter had begun. A chapter where the past and present could coexist, where forgiveness could conquer even the darkest of desires. The Haunting of Harrogate House. The fog clung to the edges of Harrogate House like a shroud, obscuring the sprawling, decaying mansion that stood on the outskirts of the fog-shrouded town. Sarah had inherited this cursed house, a place of chilling legends and whispered tales, and now she returned to uncover the tragic history that lay within its decaying walls. Sarah, a young woman with a heavy heart and a determination to unravel the mysteries of her past, had been drawn back to her ancestral home. The weight of family legacies hung heavy upon her, and she felt an unspoken obligation to confront the secrets that had plagued her family for generations. As she stepped through the creaking front door of Harrogate House, she was greeted by an oppressive silence, broken only by the faint echo of her own footsteps on the worn wooden floors. Cobwebs draped from the ornate chandeliers, and dust-covered portraits of her ancestors lined the walls, each with their own haunting story to tell. But it was not the portraits that troubled Sarah the most. It was the ghostly presence that seemed to linger in the corners of her vision. Samuel, a vampire from her family's distant past, had made this house his eternal prison. His tragic history was intertwined with that of Harrogate House, and he was bound to it by a curse that defied the boundaries between life and death. As Sarah delved deeper into the mysteries of the house, she uncovered the dark and tragic past of Samuel. He had been a man consumed by darkness, a vampire who had sought eternal life at a terrible cost. The curse that bound him to the mansion had been a result of his insatiable thirst for power and immortality. Sarah's ancestors had discovered Samuel's dark secret and had imprisoned him within the mansion's walls. His ghostly presence had haunted the house for centuries, a reminder of the price that had been paid for the family's legacy. With each passing day, Samuel's spirit grew stronger, and Sarah could feel his malevolent presence closing in. The atmosphere in Harrogate House grew increasingly oppressive, and she knew that she had to confront the vengeful vampire if she hoped to break the curse that bound him to the mansion. It was on a moonless night, as the fog outside enveloped the house in an impenetrable shroud, that Sarah came face to face with Samuel's spirit. She stood in the dimly lit drawing room, surrounded by the eerie silence of the mansion. Samuel's ghostly form materialized before her, his eyes filled with an otherworldly hunger. He spoke of his torment, of the centuries he had spent in darkness, and the bitterness that had consumed his soul. He longed for release, for a chance to break free from the curse that bound him to the house. But Sarah knew that the curse was not easily broken. It was a curse born of dark deeds and unforgivable sins, and it had endured through generations. She realized that she was the key to breaking the curse, that her presence in Harrogate House held the power to confront the darkness of her family's past. With a heavy heart, Sarah made a fateful decision. She would confront the darkness within the mansion, the legacy of her ancestors, and the vengeful vampire that haunted its halls. She would seek a way to break the curse, to free Samuel's tormented spirit from its eternal prison. As she delved deeper into the house's hidden passages and long-forgotten secrets, Sarah uncovered the key to breaking the curse, a long-lost family heirloom, a relic of her family's dark past. With the relic in hand, she confronted Samuel in a chilling showdown that would determine the fate of Harrogate House and its haunted legacy. In the dimly lit drawing room, the relic glowed with an otherworldly light as Sarah faced Samuel's ghostly presence. The boundaries between life and death seemed to blur, and the house itself groaned as if in agony. With a final, desperate act, Sarah used the relic to banish Samuel's spirit from Harrogate House, breaking the curse that had bound him for centuries. The mansion trembled, and Samuel's agonized cries echoed through the halls as he faded into oblivion. The fog outside slowly lifted, revealing Harrogate House in all its eerie splendor. Sarah stood in the drawing room, the weight of centuries of family legacies and dark secrets lifting from her shoulders. The house was no longer haunted by the vengeful vampire's presence, and a sense of peace settled over its decaying halls. Harrogate House, once a place of darkness and despair, was now free from the curse that had plagued it for generations. The fog-shrouded town, unaware of the battles that had been fought within the mansion's walls, continued on with its daily life. As Sarah left the house behind, she knew that the past could never truly be erased. But the boundaries between life and death had been restored. The weight of her family's legacy had been lifted. And the haunting of Harrogate House was a tale that would fade into the annals of history, a story of redemption and the enduring power of love. Midnight at the Carnival. In the darkest hour of the night, when the world slept and the moon hung low in the sky, a macabre carnival emerged from the depths of shadow, appearing in an abandoned field on the outskirts of town. It was a place of twisted wonders, where nightmares danced with reality, and the living dared to glimpse the otherworldly. Leela, a young woman with an insatiable curiosity, had heard whispers of the mysterious midnight carnival that appeared only in the witching hour. Its allure was undeniable, drawing her like a moth to a flame. She longed to unravel the secrets hidden within its twisted tents and grotesque performances. As Leela approached the field where the carnival stood, a sense of foreboding washed over her. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, and the flickering lanterns that illuminated the carnival's entrance cast long, menacing shadows. She knew that once she crossed the threshold, there would be no turning back. The entrance to the carnival was marked by a tattered banner that read "Midnight at the Carnival" in macabre, swirling letters. Leela hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. But her curiosity overcame her fear, and she stepped inside. The world she entered was a surreal dreamscape, a nightmare brought to life. Twisted attractions lined the carnival grounds, a hall of mirrors that distorted reality, a hypnotic, vampiric dance troupe that moved with otherworldly grace, and a fortune-teller's tent where the future was foretold in blood. But it was the ringmaster, a tall, sinister figure named Lucius, who held Leela's attention. His eyes were like pools of darkness, and his voice dripped with honeyed malevolence as he invited her to become part of the carnival's grotesque performance. Leela was unable to resist the allure of the bizarre, and she found herself entangled in the carnival's nightmarish acts. She was strapped to a spinning wheel, where knives hurled through the air with deadly precision, narrowly missing her. She was placed in a cage and paraded before the carnival's audience, who jeered and applauded as if they were witnessing a grand spectacle. The boundary between reality and illusion blurred, and Leela felt as if she had been transported to a realm beyond the mortal world. The carnival's grotesque performers, with their contorted bodies and twisted smiles, seemed to exist outside of time and space, trapped in an eternal performance of the bizarre. As the night wore on, Leela's sense of dread deepened. She knew that she had become a pawn in the carnival's nightmarish game, a puppet in the hands of a malevolent ringmaster. She longed to escape the carnival's clutches, to break free from its hypnotic hold, but the more she struggled, the tighter the chains of her captivity grew. It was then that she discovered the true nature of the carnival and its ringmaster, Lucius. As the clock struck midnight, the carnival underwent a grotesque transformation. The performers' bodies contorted and twisted, their faces contorting into nightmarish masks. They revealed their true selves, vampires, creatures of the night who thrived on the terror of the living. Leela's heart pounded as she realized the horrifying truth. The carnival was a trap, a feeding ground for the vampires, and she had unwittingly become their prey. Lucius, the ringmaster, was their leader, and he reveled in the fear and despair of his captives. In a final, horrifying revelation, Lucius revealed his fangs and lunged at Leela, his eyes gleaming with hunger. She could feel the cold, sharp points of his teeth as they sank into her neck, and a searing pain shot through her body. But as her vision faded, as the darkness of the carnival closed in around her, Leela summoned every ounce of her willpower and fought back. With a desperate burst of strength, she broke free from the ringmaster's grasp and fled into the night. The carnival and its nightmarish performers chased after her, their grotesque forms illuminated by the pale moonlight. Leela's heart pounded in her chest as she ran, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but she refused to succumb to the darkness that pursued her. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, Leela reached the edge of the carnival grounds. The vampires, bound by their curse, were forced to retreat, their grotesque forms dissolving into the shadows. Leela collapsed to the ground, her body battered and bruised, but her spirit unbroken. She had survived the nightmarish carnival, had escaped the clutches of the vampiric ringmaster, and had returned to the world of the living. As she lay on the cold, damp ground, Leela knew that the carnival would return, that its macabre wonders would once again tempt the curious and the daring. But she also knew that she had faced the nightmare, and had emerged from the other side, a survivor of the horrors that lurked in the darkest corners of the human psyche. Midnight at the Carnival was a tale whispered in hushed tones, a story of the allure of the bizarre and the consequences of curiosity. It was a nightmare brought to life, a surreal dreamscape where reality and illusion danced in a twisted waltz, and where the line between life and death was blurred by the haunting presence of the vampires that thrived in the darkness. The Silent Coven. In the remote reaches of Eastern Europe, where mist shrouded the land like a veil of secrets, there existed a village forgotten by time. Its name whispered only in hushed tones, for it harbored a coven of reclusive vampires who had lived in the shadows for centuries. Elena, a curious outsider with an insatiable wanderlust, had stumbled upon this mysterious village quite by accident. Her journey through the dense, fog-covered forests had led her to its hidden outskirts. The village appeared desolate, its houses sagging under the weight of time and decay. As Elena ventured deeper into the heart of the village, a sense of foreboding settled over her. It was as though the very air held its breath, waiting for something to happen. Ancient symbols adorned the walls, etched in blood-red paint, their meanings lost to all but the coven. Her presence did not go unnoticed for long. The elders, the ancient vampires who ruled the coven with an iron grip, sensed the intruder in their midst. They were the guardians of dark traditions, the keepers of secrets that dated back to a time when humanity was but a fragile flicker of life. The revelation of the vampire coven's existence sent shockwaves through the village. The humans who dwelled there had long lived in uneasy truce with the vampires, abiding by a set of unspoken rules that maintained a fragile balance between the two worlds. But Elena's arrival threatened to disrupt that delicate equilibrium. The villagers, wary of the outsiders who dared to venture into their mist-shrouded domain, watched as Alina uncovered the village's sinister secrets. She stumbled upon a cryptic, blood-filled ritual that took place beneath the pale light of the moon, a ritual that bound the coven to the village and ensured their continued survival. The elders, their eyes as old as time itself, saw in Alina a threat to their way of life. She was an outsider, an interloper in their ancient world, and they could not allow her to reveal their existence to the outside world. In the dead of night, as the fog thickened around the village, the elders made their move. They descended upon Alina with a swiftness that belied their age, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly hunger. Alina, with fear coursing through her veins, fought to escape their grasp, but their strength was beyond mortal comprehension. They spoke of the consequences of disturbing ancient traditions, of the price that must be paid for trespassing on their sacred ground. In a chilling confrontation that spanned the eerie, fog-drenched streets of the village, Alina found herself face to face with the elders. They spoke of the coven's centuries-old pact with the villagers, of the uneasy truce that had allowed both humans and vampires to coexist in a delicate balance. But Alina, with a spirit as fierce as her curiosity, refused to be cowed by their otherworldly presence. She challenged the elders, demanding to know why their existence remained hidden from the world. She questioned the price that the villagers paid in blood for the coven's protection. As the tension reached its peak, the village itself seemed to hold its breath, as though the very earth were waiting for a resolution to the age-old conflict. The elders, with their ancient eyes filled with a deep, unfathomable sorrow, knew that the time had come to make a choice. In the end, they chose to release Alina, to allow her to leave the village and keep their secrets hidden from the world. But they warned her that the consequences of disturbing ancient traditions would not be forgotten, that the village would forever bear the scars of her intrusion. Alina, with the weight of her encounter with the elders heavy upon her, left the village behind. As she disappeared into the mist-shrouded forest, she knew that the clash of human and supernatural worlds was a tale that would be told in hushed tones for generations to come. The village, with its eerie fog and cryptic symbols, would remain a place of mystery and foreboding, where ancient rituals and dark traditions held sway. The coven of reclusive vampires would continue to exist in the shadows, their secrets hidden from the world, their existence known only to those who dared to venture into the heart of the misty village. The Silent Coven was a tale of the clash between the outsider and the insider, a story of the consequences of disturbing ancient traditions, and a glimpse into the blurred lines between the human and supernatural worlds. It was a tale whispered in the darkest corners of Eastern Europe, a tale of the price paid for curiosity and the enduring power of secrets kept hidden from the world. The last night of St. Agnes. St. Agnes Cathedral stood as a silent sentinel in the heart of the city, its ancient stones whispering tales of centuries gone by. Within its hallowed walls, the faithful had sought solace, and the lost had sought redemption. But beneath its serene exterior lay a dark secret, hidden within the labyrinthine catacombs that wound their way beneath the sacred ground. Father Michael, a priest burdened with doubt and struggling to find his faith, had spent years tending to the spiritual needs of his congregation. The weight of their hopes and fears bore down on him, and he often found himself seeking solace in the quiet corridors of the cathedral. One fateful night, as he wandered the dimly lit chambers, his footsteps echoing through the empty halls, Father Michael stumbled upon a hidden entrance in the cathedral's crypt. A cold draft whispered from the darkness below, and an inexplicable curiosity pulled him toward the concealed passage. Descending into the depths of the catacombs, Father Michael found himself in a place that defied reason. Candlelit chambers adorned with religious iconography gave way to narrow, winding corridors, and the scent of ancient stone mingled with the earthy scent of decay. As he ventured further into the labyrinthine catacombs, Father Michael made a chilling discovery. He was not alone in the darkness. In the dim light, he glimpsed the figures of beings that should not exist, vampires, their eyes gleaming with an otherworldly hunger. Among them was Alara, a vampire with a haunted past and a desperate longing for redemption. Her existence was a contradiction, a creature of the night yearning for salvation within the sacred confines of the cathedral. Father Michael's discovery sent shockwaves through the foundations of his faith. He had been raised to believe in the sanctity of the church, the unquestionable goodness of the divine. Yet here, beneath the cathedral's holiest of grounds, he found creatures that challenged the very essence of his beliefs. Alara, her voice a haunting melody that echoed through the catacombs, revealed her tragic history. She had been transformed into a vampire against her will, a victim of a relentless thirst for blood. But she had resisted the darkness within her, seeking solace within the cathedral's hallowed halls. As Father Michael listened to Alara's tale, he found himself torn between his duty as a priest and his burgeoning compassion for the vampire before him. She spoke of the complexities of good and evil, the blurred lines between right and wrong, and the longing for redemption that had kept her anchored to the cathedral. But the discovery of the vampires beneath St. Agnes Cathedral had not gone unnoticed. A vengeful vampire hunter, driven by a fanatical desire to eradicate the undead, descended upon the sacred place. He saw the vampires as abominations that defiled the sanctity of the church, and he was determined to cleanse the cathedral of their presence. As the catacombs became a battleground between the priest, the vampire, and the vampire hunter, the cathedral itself seemed to hold its breath. The very walls bore witness to the dramatic showdown between the forces of faith and doubt, redemption and vengeance. Father Michael, torn between his duty to protect the church and his compassion for Alara, faced an impossible choice. He knew that the vampire hunter's fanaticism threatened to bring ruin to the cathedral and all who sought solace within its walls. In a moment of desperate clarity, Father Michael confronted the vampire hunter, seeking to find a peaceful resolution to the conflict. He implored the hunter to see the complexity of the situation, the potential for redemption that lay within the vampires. But the hunter, blinded by his single-minded purpose, would not be swayed. The catacombs erupted into chaos as the final, climactic showdown between the priest, the vampire, and the vampire hunter unfolded. In the end, the cathedral itself seemed to intervene, as though the ancient stones bore witness to the struggle and sought to protect the sanctuary that had stood for centuries. The catacombs trembled, and a cascade of falling debris separated the combatants. As the dust settled, Father Michael emerged from the darkness, his faith forever altered by the events that had transpired. Alara, her eyes filled with a profound sadness, had vanished into the shadows, seeking solace in the cathedral's hidden recesses. The cathedral, with its ancient secrets and hidden catacombs, continued to stand as a beacon of hope and redemption for those who sought shelter within its hallowed walls. Father Michael, burdened by the knowledge of the supernatural world that dwelled beneath the surface, continued his journey of faith, forever haunted by the events of that fateful night. The last night of St. Agnes was a tale of faith and doubt, redemption, and the complexities of good and evil. It was a story whispered in the dimly lit chambers of the cathedral, a testament to the enduring power of the sacred and the profound impact of the supernatural on the human soul.